Flatulence, aka farting, bustin' ass, crop dusting, air biscuits, brown thunder. Whatever you call it, we all do it. Me, you, your dad, your mom, your best friend, even that super hot sex kitten you've had your eye on. Oh yeah, she totally toots. Farting makes us human, but handling your hiney horn in public appropriately makes you a gentleman. Now we've all been in the position where it hits. You're like, oh! Ah, and you feel the gas, the bloating. You've got to rip one. And if you're by yourself, no problem. Rip away and feel better. But because we're social creatures, sometimes when the feeling hits, you can't. For two reasons. A, it might smell, and B, it may be silent but deadly. And as a gentleman, you know, simply proclaiming whoever smelt it, dealt it, isn't gonna cut it. And so now I'd like to go over how a gentleman handles his gas. But first, the alpha M flatulent fact of the day. Did you know that the average person farts 20 times each and every day? Well, first, let's talk about where gas comes from in the first place. Alright, so here's the deal. The 411 on that action. Alright, when you eat, consume foods, it's digesting. During the digestion process, you are absorbing some of the nutrients, but some of the nutrients are getting passed along. Well, these nutrients that do not get absorbed actually start to ferment, like beer. And during the fermentation process, there are gases that are omitted. The main one is hydrogen sulfide. This is the stinky one. Now, for those of you who have experienced or eat a clean diet high in fiber, you know and your friends know that you produce an excessive amount of gas because the fiber is actually not absorbable and it's passing right through, it's fermenting. But the other thing you'll probably notice is that these farts don't smell as bad as other ones, alright? But poots coming from meat pack a much more potent punch because there's more hydrogen sulfide in meat. Alright, now, since we know where gas actually comes from and how it started, let's talk about how to actually handle it. So have you ever been in the situation where you're in a board meeting, a conference room, you're with a group of people, maybe it's class, and the feeling hits, and you're like, all of a sudden the pressure, it's like, it hurts. So what do? Do you gently try and ease it out? Super easy, right? And then eventually when the smell actually hits your nose, you pull one of these. The other option is to hold it. Alright, you don't let it out, but you sit there in agonizing pain. This sucks. So how does a gentleman handle this situation? Alright, you know now that gas is caused by eating food. So you could stop eating. This would eliminate gas, but this isn't very realistic. Alright? Now, if there are certain foods that you've identified that cause you excessive gas, like for me, Brussels sprouts. I love them. Seriously, I love them. But let me tell you something, all the people around me pay because I am killing it. For some reasons, Brussels sprouts, Brussels sprouts, when I eat them, Brussels sprouts don't agree with my system. And so it is Sin City in my pants when I eat them. So if you can identify certain foods, maybe it's broccoli, maybe it's eggs, maybe it's whatever, then you can avoid it. And this is going to eliminate or limit the gas that you're actually producing. There are, however, two other options that you may want to consider. Option number one is something called Beano. Beano is actually an enzyme. It's a naturally occurring enzyme that you take prior to eating or with a meal. And what happens, this enzyme actually reduces the amount of fermentation that happens. They came up with the name Beano because a lot of times beans, the musical fruit, the more you eat, the more you toot. You've heard it 1,000 times. Well, it's not just for beans. It's pretty much for anything that gives you gas. The other option, and one that I'm sure you guys have heard of, is a product called Gas-X. Now, this is not an enzyme. It's actually an anti-foaming agent. So what happens during the fermentation process, all right, little tiny bubbles are starting to develop, all right? Now, when you take Gas-X, instead of these little bubbles, because it's these little ones that are causing a lot of discomfort and bloating, it actually helps them form bigger bubbles. So eventually you're going to have to drop a bomb and fart like crazy, but it's going to eliminate a lot of the bloating and discomfort. So if you're one and you're wanting to prevent gas, this probably isn't the best option. So you're a gentleman, you've got gas. Prevention, I would say, is the best option, but a lot of times you find yourself in compromising positions or places where you got it, and so now let's talk about a few options of how a gentleman can handle his gas in public. When a gentleman feels that uncomfortable feeling, there's a rumble in the jungle. He knows it's about to blow. He politely excuses himself and leaves the room. and returns after he's done his business. Farts will linger, and those stinky ones linger a lot longer than some of those clean ones you get from farting from celery, all right? You don't want anybody getting in your car. Have you ever gotten in the car too fast when somebody's like, don't get wait, and you get in, you're like, God, who farted? If a gentleman is afraid of making noise, and he's afraid it's going to be a little bit too loud, there is a trick I would like to teach you, and it's simple, it's covert, but it is very effective, all right? What he does, the gentleman, he places his hand in his back pocket, in the pocket, and then grab a handful of your butt and pull your butt cheeks apart and slowly release the gas. Silence. Yeah, it's still gonna stink, but it didn't make that loud, obnoxious, embarrassing noise. At that point, then blame it on your date. Oh my God, did you just... Disgusting. That's why you get pets. You can always blame it on the dog. A gentleman has gas. We all do. There's no getting around it. It's a part of life and it's okay. But a gentleman understands what foods are going to cause him excessive gas, and he avoids them when he needs to, when he's not going to be in a position where he can freely relieve his pressure. Beano is Keno if taken prior to or with a meal for reducing or eliminating gas. But if you forget and you get gas and you're like, God, I'm so uncomfortable, you can always take Gas X. This is actually going to help create a larger gas bubble for you to easily pass and ease your pain. And if you're in public and you can't help it and you fart by accident or on purpose, a gentleman doesn't blame somebody else. He says, oops, that's me. Sorry about that. He apologizes and moves on. Guys, don't beat yourself up. Farts happen. Happens to me, happens to you, happens to that super hot sex kitten.